Okay, well, hi everyone. Welcome to the 24th annual Miami Jewish Film Festival, one of the world's largest and oldest Jewish cultural events. We want to thank all of our members, sponsors, and community partners and volunteers, all of you film lovers, and especially our sponsors, being the Center for the Advancement of Jewish Education, or SAGE, as you might know it better, and the Greatest Jewish Federation for the continued support throughout all these years. My name is Eli Sage Rosenberg. I am a trans advocate. I do a little bit of everything. And today I am the moderator for this wonderful, wonderful panel. Today with me here, I have both the writer and director of a truly amazing film called Tahara. So with us today, we have the director, Olivia Peace, and we also have the writer themselves, Hannah. I'm sorry, mixing up the character with it, but Jess Zeidman. So
Hi.
let's get started and jump right in. How are you guys doing?
Good. I really like your energy also.
I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
you killed that.
Yeah, it's a little bit of like normal energeticness with a little bit of nerves, but always in a safe space. It always kind of just shines through. So before we get started, actually, I kind of want to just establish everyone's pronouns. My pronouns are they, them. What about you guys?
I go by she and they.
And I go by she, her, hers.
Gotcha. And Jess, I apologize for messing up your name. I think the character stuck with me so much that I was like, Hannah. And I'm like, wait a second, let's put a pause on that.
Well, that's okay. I'm very flattered that you remembered the character's name. And no, yes, my name is Jess Zeidman. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much to Miami Jewish Film Festival for having us. We wish we could be with you, but thank you so much for watching the film. And I'm excited to talk about it with you.
Definitely. I mean, I can just say that, wow, because I am a Black Jewish queer person, and when I saw what the movie was about, I'm like, oh my God, this exists. This is something that we have. This is something that I get to watch because honestly, I don't think I've ever seen a story where it was like my story. So I really resonated with that. So one, congratulations on both of you guys just doing such an incredible job. Just the characters were just so real. The dialogue was so just like I felt like I was there. Like with that scene with the popping pimple, I was like, that is just too real. So with the film being such a coming of age, just centering around those crucial times where we're growing as people, I would actually love to hear a little bit about the two of you and kind of like where you grew up. And just, again, you could do the very shortened version, but I just like, this film is all about coming of age. So I kind of want to hear a little bit about your guys' personal stories. So Olivia, feel free to jump in and start us off.
Yeah. So hello, I'm Olivia. I'm from Detroit, Michigan. And I did not grow up wanting to be a filmmaker. I grew up wanting to be like a painter. I drew a lot. I wanted to be a tattoo artist for the longest. But I went to Northwestern and sort of fell into the film program through taking what I knew from painting and drawing and learning how to animate. Um, so kind of from then on, all of the stuff that I've made has always had these little animated elements, which now you see in Tahara. And a lot of our friends did a lot of favors on this movie. One of my friends, Emily Ann Hoffman, got to do much of the animation in this film too, which really brought it to life. But yeah, Jess also went to Northwestern. Feel free to go.
Yes, totally. Well, where we grew up, yes, Olivia's from Detroit. I am from Rochester, New York. We made the movie at the synagogue that I was raised in, Temple Bethel. Huge gratitude-filled shout out to everyone who works at Temple Bethel. Truly everyone. They let us make a movie in the synagogue. The whole movie. The sanctuary scenes are the sanctuary where I was bat mitzvahed. The
Wow.
classroom scene is the classroom that I attended Hebrew school 3 days a week, baby to teenager. And yeah, I was raised conservative Jewish. I'm still practicing Jewish person. I wanted to be a writer, still want to be a writer. and I did go to Northwestern. Olivia and I did not know each other in college, fun fact. But we did connect kind of through that. And yeah, I definitely think coming of age stories, to go back to your question, coming of age stories were incredibly important, if I can say, for both of us growing up. There were movies that we cherished. And I think something that's exciting when you're setting out to make that first movie is really speaking to like what you want to see in the world that you haven't gotten to see yet. So it's really exciting. And I'm very thankful that you said that you saw so much of yourself in this. I mean, that's the dream. That's like that is it. It is so much, where does our art meet our life, meet our expectations, meet our dreams and our hopes? And I think that like so much of being a teenager, and I still carry this energy because I want to be a teenager forever, is those wants and those desires. And I think filmmaking as a medium is really a place to like kind of go wild with it and see how you can make it happen. And some background on the film is I wrote this film as part of a Northwestern screenwriting class, writing the micro budget feature. And I was really clinging on to the idea. I was 19 when I started the project. I'm 24 now. And I was so clinging on to those last days of teenagerhood. I'd never envisioned my life past, honestly, 18. So being 19 was pretty rocky. I saw a tweet today that said being 19 is like the worst age. And I was like, I actually agree with that. But regardless, I poured kind of all of that energy into this script, and I continued to work on it. And I ended up connecting with Olivia through an originally like a failed email. And then I got the right email address. And then we got to make it. And all throughout the process, we have been talking about us, and I think the creative team, that's everybody behind the camera and everyone in front of the camera, we've really been talking about what it's been like to like be a teenager and how that mindset like still propels us today.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
No,
definitely
so
a huge
true.
part of it.
No, it's so interesting how much our inner child plays in with like everything that we do. And I think that was also something just so powerful about the movie, is that you felt like you had that scene. Like I really felt like I was like, I definitely had that moment in Temple where I was like, okay, I need a break from everything and I'm just going to sit in the girls' bathroom. So that's just so interesting. I mean, there was just so many great shots in the film. And actually one of my favorite shots was this close up of a bagel with cream cheese being made with lox on top. Because I just looked at it and I'm like, that is so Jewish. And it just really like the nostalgia of it all just hit me. So speaking on integrating like very iconic Jewish everything into films, what exactly were like the key aspects of Judaism that you guys felt like this needs to be represented or just showcased in this film somehow?
Totally, that's an amazing question. I think my intention really was to show part of the like contemporary American Jewish experience, especially for younger people. Because as somebody who feels like I really came into my Jewish identity as a child, it's so much of who I am, but it's also so much of like what we were trying to capture, which is like that feeling of like who your Hebrew school teacher is, what the vibe is like in a Hebrew school classroom. Cause it's like, this isn't secular school, you know, like this isn't like, we're not talking about like algebra 2 and like the SATs. We're talking about like contemplating Talmudic texts and like what's up with people's bat mitzvahs and like what's good with like what people are, you know, doing before or after Hebrew school. Like I feel like that social dynamic is something I was really going for. And additionally, I think other sort of iconic pieces we wanted to capture was the kind of breakdowns of community within the space. I think so much so there is, you know, the larger Jewish community that you're a part of, but there's also these like micro pieces. There's Carrie and Hannah against everybody. There's Elena and you know her little kind of minions of a sort, and there's, you know, Natalie and Zach. There's like these people, and you're all thrown in the mix. And sure, you're all like a Hebrew school class, and you're all part of a larger Rochesterian, in this case, like Jewish community, but you're all still individuals in this space. And I think that's such an interesting part of Judaism in general for me, is like how we differentiate ourselves from our other Jews, from our other people, and like seeing how those kind of pieces reverberate off each other.
No, I love that. And Olivia, I remember reading somewhere that you actually are not from a Jewish background. So I'm very, very curious about like when kind of doing the research on all this and making the shots, like what things really stood out to you or really like impacted you?
Yeah, I mean, I think initially when Jess sent the script and I read the log line, I was a bit hesitant to take on the story. I was like, oh no, I don't know if I'll be able to relate to this all the way. But um, I read it and I think that there were actually a lot of parallels because I went to religious school growing up too, through like elementary, middle school, but it was a Christian school. And that bathroom scene, like we had a similar bathroom, a very similar floral couch that I remember escaping to as well. And so for me, like the very first film that I shot was a documentary. And you kind of need to just go into everything. I think whether you think you know a lot about an experience or not, as a director, with a lot of humility and with like a putting your research, I think, at the forefront. So like we from the very beginning, I love making a big like Pinterest board, and like one of the sub boards inside of my Pinterest was just research. Um, and so constantly I was asking Jess all these questions, which then led to us talking to like the cantor at the synagogue, which then like led to me like asking other friends. I had like interviews. I asked other rabbis because I really wanted to make sure for sure that the funeral was right. That felt really realistic and that we were being respectful of that, so that we don't put people outside of the plot of the film just because logistical things aren't correct. But I think through learning more about the funeral, the thing that really struck me was I really loved how so much emphasis went on making things, on giving people traditions so that all the pressure isn't on the family. Like during this really difficult time, like you already know like what kind of casket people are going to get. Like, okay, there's going to be a luncheon afterwards, like people are going to be with you. um and yeah, you really, in other, like for us, like you really don't have that. You're kind of out on your own to try to plan this funeral alone. So yeah, I really loved that. And then like just over time learning more and more about the community, I really really loved that, and I wanted to make sure that that was emphasized in the film. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a beautiful response. I mean, I think, prior to watching the film, like I hadn't really thought about just how communal based, like obviously I've thought about the fact that the Jewish community is a Jewish community. I can go anywhere and I say my last name's Rosenberg and all of a sudden it's like, oh, do you know the other Rosenbergs? But there's definitely like this heavy communal feeling within the Jewish atmosphere. And it's definitely translated even after we're past, like even after we've gone away, like there's still this fact of people rallying around us. So that is indeed very beautiful. Another thing that really, and there's so many things I'm going to try to touch on because I really did fall in love with this movie. I'm going to have to be completely honest. It was something where I said yes before seeing it, but after when I saw it, I'm like, wow, I get the opportunity to talk to them. This is so incredible. But one thing I found especially interesting as a Black Jewish person, with both my parents are Jewish, is that it was very interesting because you see with Carrie that yes, she's Black, but it's not the center of the whole story. And I can also relate to this as being a trans person, where sometimes when we're in these spaces or there's movies about us, it's like everything has to do with our minority identity. And that's the entire plot of the movie. And we don't ever just get a movie where we just get to be, and other things happen. So was that an intentional choice on your guys' part?
So I think, I don't know who should go first. I'm just talking.
No, go for
Yeah.
it.
You go first and I'll join in.
Yeah, I mean, when I read the script initially, like I have not made anything that doesn't center Black people in it. I'm a Black person. I was a Black teenager. Um, and so for me, like in reading it, um, from the way that Carrie, just the perspective that Carrie had in the script, I was like, this seems like a Black person to me reading this script. And if I were to direct it, Carrie would be Black specifically. And so I said that to Jess. And Jess was like, yeah, like, and kind of along with a couple of pages worth of like ideas, just like kept saying yes, like every step of the way. And so there was like some dialogue that needed to be tweaked like along the way. And like some special, I don't know, because on the one hand, like I really think it's important to have characters who just get to be, and who, you know, the entire film isn't hinging on their identity. But I also didn't want her to feel like she was just plopped into the film. So yeah, we tried to take a lot of care, like with everything from her styling to the ways that she shot. So yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed that. That's so special.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Uh,
oh, sorry. Do you want to keep going?
no, go for it.
Oh, sure. It's funny. So Olivia had told me about that because I had never, that was not the intention when I had written it, but I, Olivia gave me that note and I was like, absolutely, because if there's one thing we can do through art, it's widen everyone's idea of what a person should or should not be through what they should or should not or could not look like. And I think I actually talked to my dad about it. My dad was raised in Cherry Hill and he went to synagogue with a lot of Jews of color. And he was talking to me about that. And I was like, that is an experience that is so common and will continue to be common, but we don't see in Jewish media, we don't see that. We think of like a Jewish person and we think of like a white person. And that's not a true reflection of the world we live in. And I think it's disappointing because through, you know, our films and our TV shows and everything, we kind of perpetuate an idea of a culture. I mean, those become cultural touchstones. So I think it's really important that we were able to broaden that experience, but also not like make Carrie have to answer on behalf of all Black Jews everywhere in all like pieces of the earth. Like, I think it's so important to remember that this is like a story grounded in the kind of conversation that these people, these young people, can have on a day like that day, which is so intense and loaded with so much other stuff. So I think it's really Madeline's performance that brought so much grace to the character. I really think it's like that dimensionality that I think you're speaking to so comes from like what Maddie brought to the role and how she accessed her own sort of place as a young Black woman and a person who's gone through life in a lot of primarily white spaces.
Yeah. No, I mean, again, it's so incredible that this is again it's happening because this is, you know, again, in a sense, like this is also my story where it's something. So again, I'm just so happy to see a piece of media where it is, because I feel like too commonly when I'm in spaces, and I actually have a white partner and he's also Jewish and he wears a kippah and all that. And it's interesting because I
Mm,
normally get the question like, oh, did you convert for him? I'm like, no, baby, I went to an
mm.
Orthodox private school. Like I speak Hebrew, I speak a tiny bit of Yiddish. Like we're really out here. And speaking of Jewish connection, actually, my mom is actually from Cherry Hill. So if my eyes
Oh,
got really
nice.
wide when you said Cherry Hill, that's why. More proof that the Jewish community is just, we're one giant circle that's also tiny. But speaking more on the characters and the casting choice, I would actually love to hear what the energy was like on set, because it's so interesting because the setting is a funeral. It's supposed to be this very somber occasion, but yet you have these young people acting. So I would really love to hear what that energy was like on set, or any notes that you had to give to kind of get them to get that performance that you needed from them.
Yeah, I mean, we got super, super lucky. We had a really young cast and crew. I think I was just thinking about that the other day. This is most people's first feature film, also. And we we felt that, I think, sometimes, and we kind of had like a little scrappy way of making stuff happen, a way out of no way. But Rachel and Madeline, our two leads, actually met, I believe, was that the night before filming? Yeah, maybe the day before filming in a costume fitting. And so they had really just that one day to get to know each other and become best friends that they needed to be for the movie. Um, but luckily, they're both really nice people. They're both like really incredible performers, really funny too. Rachel's a stand-up comedian, and Madeline's just really silly as well. um, so yeah, I don't know. It kind of had like a bit of a summer camp vibe to it. Like we went to Niagara Falls, like people would go to like the thrift shop together. Most of us were staying in Jess's childhood home all together. So, it felt, I think while it being like high stakes because it was a lot of our first films and we were still kind of trying to figure out what we were doing. I don't know, it felt really fun along the way as we kind of problem solved and like built the characters out together.
That's awesome. I love it.
Oh, it's my turn.
Yeah.
I was so reminiscing, and I was so like, damn, Olivia's so right. Sorry that I swore. Yeah, I feel like on set specifically, one, again, being in an actual synagogue, I think brought a lot of that tension that you see, which is like we were kind of being badly behaved as a bunch of young people, but we also had to be respectful because we were in a synagogue. So I think that helped definitely with the energy setting of each day. And I think that atmospheric location vibe was so helpful in just setting the tone. And I also think, as Olivia said, like we were really like building the house together. And I think that helped. I think everyone was in kind of a vulnerable place. Am I okay in saying that? And I think it's helpful when you're telling that kind of story where I think everyone's emotions were like kind of with the characters. We all wanted to grow into the filmmakers that we're all going to be for sure, but I think it was so like a coming of age within a coming of age, kind of situation.
Oh, I
Yeah,
love
and
that.
also, I mean, you just reminded me the synagogue was under construction
Oh
like
yeah.
throughout. So we had 15 days to shoot. And like obviously we can't shoot on the Sabbath. And I think there was a holiday that came up at some point too.
We had a one Wednesday when we went to Niagara Falls, we were kicked out.
Yeah. Not of Niagara Falls. We were kicked out
Oh,
of
I
the
was like, how
synagogue.
did you manage that?
No.
Yeah,
We went to we ended up going to Niagara Falls because we like couldn't work, and of course we couldn't just rest. We had to like go do a big thing.
Yeah. So, a lot of it was we would kind of show up to shoot a location in one day and then find like, oh no, we need to actually shoot this location because now the roof is gone or like there's no chairs in the
No
temple.
chairs.
So it was a
Drilling.
lot of, yeah, flexibility, I think that we got on set, which then we kind of lent to the characters. Like some of the best lines were improvised too. Yeah, so I think it all kind of came together.
I love that. And I also love hearing so much about your guys' own personal growth because it's literally like, what is that saying? Art imitates life. You know what I mean? It's
Mm,
something where you guys are coming of age with it together. And I think that's so beautiful. And I kind of want to talk a little bit about like the source material. Specifically, like Jess, I kind of did a little bit of research, but I would love to hear it being said from you. Was writing is so tough. Producing is so tough. Creating content is tough. Getting motivated, sometimes impossible. So what was it about this that made you be like, I need to finish this project or write
That
this script?
that is a great question. Well, it started off as a class assignment, so that helps. It helps when grades are on the line, people. And so I wrote 35 pages of it for that class because they said you could be done at 35. So I was done. And then I sort of kept coming back to it because I thought, this is a piece of writing I've done that's really kind of showcased my voice in a way that I want to grow into this. Like I want to see if I can stretch this out more and more into like a feature script because I had never written a feature script, and it's not a long script. What, like 88, 98 pages, maybe not even 98. It's quite short actually. But I think I stuck with it because I was still wanting to see if other people, this is kind of ridiculous, but it's like if other people would connect with this, because it felt so specific to me. And every step of the way, it really was the encouragement of others to keep going that has definitely gotten me there. I think it's so like, I wrote the idea, sure, but it so is like at the behest of my two other co-producers, Madison Ginsburg and Dasha Gorin, who were like, this is something makeable. This is something we'd like to watch on a screen. That I was like, okay, let's keep going, let's keep going. And then I had this amazing phone call with Olivia when I had sent them the script that really like, I still have like all the notes from that. And it so encouraged me to keep trying to make this happen, because I think when you are lucky enough, and I really do feel lucky to like have tapped into a thread of something that people can connect with, it sort of feels almost like like a divine task to keep going with it. Like I think it's so interesting. I think so much of the narrativizing around art is so like of the ego, right? It's like to prove something to someone. Oh my gosh, I'm not good with the AirPods. I think my ears move too much when I talk. But I think it's like, this feels to me the opposite. Like this was not, I mean, I hope so. I think it was so not like, I need to tell my story right now. It was like, oh, if other people could also see themselves in this story, like, let's get to it. Like, let's make something that people can see themselves in and see more and more of their family members and their community members. Like, let's make something that speaks to someone and kind of have like a community around a piece of art, because I'd never had that feeling before. And I feel like every step of the way we would send what we had, which was the script, and then Olivia made an incredible pitch deck. We would send that to people and people would say yes.
What
And
amazing feeling.
and it really blew my mind. And Olivia, I would love for you to talk about like that feeling too, because I think that's just like so much of our journey.
And Olivia, I would
Yeah.
also love to know of like why this script was something where you're like, I can do this. I want to do this.
I mean, yeah, that part is so interesting. I think a lot of it, some of it really is being young too. And I think not realizing how long it might take to make something.
That is so true.
So, like I had made music videos, short films, like short docs before. I'd never made a feature. So for me, I just moved out to LA. I had two other features that I'd written that weren't going to get made. And I just finished this program at Sundance where they'd really like hammered into us that your first feature needs to be a story that you wrote, like don't take anyone else's script. So it was kind of like a brave experiment where Jess like trusted me with this story. I read it. I got to the pimple popping scene actually in the script, and I really felt strongly that we needed to see the zit burst. So I wrote that down. I wrote down that I thought it should be in the Instagram 1:1 aspect ratio, and that we needed to include some animation in it. Told all this to Jess. Jess kept saying yes. And then started kind of reaching out to friends about who we could get who would help us bring this to life. So yeah, it's been like a lot of yeses along the way, but a lot of no's from, I think we thought also in being young that we just needed to get like some fancy person, like a famous person to like reach down and help us like up so that we can get this made. But instead it was just all of our little friends every step of the way. And so yeah, I think that's kind of the love that you can feel throughout the film. It's been that and like a lot of this sort of like setbacks or creativity, like created creativity in the film. Like I was going to talk about this trash can scenario.
Oh my
At some
gosh.
point, we tried to get a dolly. Yeah. We tried to
Okay.
get a dolly, which is essentially like a fancy filmmaking cart on wheels that goes on a track. And I wanted the first kiss between Hannah and Carrie to be so epic, and for, the camera to go around them on a dolly in slow motion, and like music maybe would play. But we couldn't fit the dolly into our bathroom location. So instead, we had to use, there was a trash can outside that had like little wheels on the bottom. So we used that to take the camera around. And there were so many little moments like that throughout the making of the film, that I think kind of made it what it is. Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, again, the characters were just so real. There was that moment where they kiss, and then all of a sudden it's this out of world experience of a clay. It was just really hit home. There was just so many different, interesting stylized choices that really just, I think, like without them, movie is still incredible. With them, it's something where it's like, how did you even think to do that? So that's so amazing. So when you guys were kind of trying to create these like almost, I would probably say kind of like psychedelic type of feeling, like what was the thought process behind like one scene, it's like this scene needs to be one where it feels out of this world or magical or etc. So I'd love for either of you guys to speak on that.
I mean, some of that is the collaboration with our crew too. Like Tahila DeCastro shot the film, and she's brilliant. I loved working with her. Also very young. Like I think she had just graduated college, and then went out and shot this feature with us. Flew out from LA to Rochester, um, and we. When I initially went out looking for cinematographers, I told them all up front that I wanted it to be in this 1:1 aspect ratio. And a lot of people wanted actually it to be big. Cinematographers wanted the frame to be as big as possible, to have all these effects and everything. And Tequila really saw the value in shooting small. Um, and with our budget, it actually ended up being a huge asset because you can crush like all of our production design into this much smaller frame and make it look really nice, even if just outside the frame there's all the construction. um, so I think there was that, like we had the pitch deck to start out. I had my storyboards shot list that me and Tequila had made, and we kind of went out really trying to focus on the emotional arcs that Jess and I had made way, way early on, like in early rewrites of the script. Um, so more than anything, I think we really wanted the emotional notes to hit, and we were kind of willing to take out anything that was distracting from that. Um, so for instance, like because the frame's so small, you can only really fit like 1.5 people in the frame at any given time. So you really need to choose who you're focusing on when they're talking or when they're not talking. Um, and we kind of had limited time too. Like sometimes there was actual Hebrew school going on. So we need to like be really clear about what we're shooting on any given day. So yeah, and then kind of in the edit, we also got really lucky in that our lead editor, Troy Lewis, also very brilliant, was with us on set. So he could edit our assembly cut like as we were shooting, so we could see exactly how things were starting to pan out. So if
Wow.
something wasn't working, yeah, then we could see immediately and like reshoot it, which we had to reshoot the first day. We were still getting it together. Um, but yeah, like over time, we just kind of got better and better and worked on the edit for quite some time, like pretty much from May through January when we premiered, to just make sure that every single moment emotionally was worthwhile, that it was hitting, that it was reading. And yeah, then like the animation and sound and everything, and even the color we sort of built around that.
Well, certainly hit home. Jess, did you want to chime in there as well?
Oh, sure. I think speaking to that like psychedelic thing, it's interesting. When I first workshopped the script as like a full feature in a different class, that was called editing the feature length script. Look at that. someone was like, oh, there's all these moments of like that's inside their heads, right? Like that. So this is probably like a play, right? Like you want to make this like a theater experience where you could like change the lighting. And I was like, no, this is a movie. But it's funny, I had not thought of animation because I don't come from an animation background, but that was something that Olivia has in their arsenal and sort of was like, I see these moments as animated. And that really was like huge click, like huge, like, of course, these are such intense emotional experiences. They don't even reflect real life because that's kind of how you feel when you're fantasizing a little bit. And I think what was really interesting is we worked with Emily Ann Hoffman, who's now a friend of both of ours, but a friend of Olivia's. And what was so exciting about Emily is that they're an animator who can work in a lot of different mediums. So they do the clay puppets like you see in The Big Kiss, but they also do rotoscope like you see in the moments between Tristan and Hannah in the coat room and in the synagogue. And I think it was really exciting to me when Olivia proposed this that the two of them, Carrie and Hannah, are very different people. And a way to make that totally clear is like, look how different the insides of their brains are. And I think that is something that we really got to have a lot of fun with. I think it's really exciting to have so many different animated styles in a film. I think it's like just like an exciting, it's a risk, like it's not just like this is an indie drama. It's like this is a teenage young person's lustful, exciting, sad, queer experiment. And I think those pieces really came from the discussions we had about their inner worlds and their inner journeys and like how they present to the world versus how they think of themselves. And that's kind of where we landed in these different styles of animation. And it's something that I hadn't originally thought of, but it so speaks to the way that like through the community of the people who made this film, that's how we got to where I think the real specialness of it all.
Yeah, it was certainly felt. I mean, touching base again on just kind of the emphasis on displaying the emotional state of all of the characters. I feel like there's, obviously for the characters, we have Hannah, we have Carrie, we have Tristan, the list goes on. But I feel like one main character is honestly grief, which is something that we're seeing, and it's present in all of the different scenes. And I really love that all the different characters are like definitely either showcasing or even experiencing grief differently. So actually, Jess, I would love to hear a little bit about exactly what you were trying to communicate by having all the characters kind of dealing with grief the way that they did.
Definitely. Well, I studied a lot of playwriting when I was in college. It's something that you learn in any playwriting class is that your characters sort of have to speak to different perspectives because otherwise it's like one person talking to themselves. So I really tried to make sure to show like a breadth of reactions to what is not an easy thing to parse, which is the death of someone but maybe don't know super well. I think that's always something that weighs heavy on you, but it's like, what do you really do when you don't have like a clear relationship to that person? So I think through their relationship to Samantha, who I think really embodies the grief that you're talking about, it's like, how do I process something so much bigger than myself, something that is likely to happen again, and something that I maybe have never experienced before because I'm such a young person? And like, where does my mind take me versus where does my heart take me? And then I'm a teenager, so I'm acting in the interest of the group. So I think having those sort of push and pull is how we get all these different reactions. And we're very, very lucky that we cast a lot of people who were very game to really like bring their perspective or what they thought was the most interesting or what they thought was the funniest to the roles that they were given. So I think that also really helped, is that like everyone dimensionalized their characters and everyone brought some of their personal experience into the roles that they were playing in order to get to that place where they all feel like genuinely different people.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. And Olivia, did you want to speak on that at all as well?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know if we did say this already, but like early on, I guess I alluded to it. Like Jess and I really did sit down at the whiteboard and mapped out arcs for every single character, and we talked extensively about grief and the grieving process and how, that kind of odd experience of being a young person at a funeral. And I know that that's something that I'd never seen in a film before. And so we kind of wanted to make sure that we were honest about it, and that a lot of times, like, you almost feel like you don't deserve to grieve if you're not directly in the nuclear family or the best friend or something. Um, and so, yeah, what is that like? How do you cope with that over time? Um, but then I don't know, I think there's also sort of a toxic positivity that like weaves its way through the narrative where like the poor teacher is just trying to like get everyone aligned like with the correct mindset of how to deal with this. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I think people don't know what to do, and a lot of people don't want to touch um, talking about grief with young people, talking about suicide, and I think we all kind of suffer for it.
100%. I think like if what I took away from it definitely was that we all experience and process grief differently, and there's no wrong way to feel it, you know? And it
Mhm.
definitely hit home for me. I mean, so I think we're actually sadly we're gonna close out with one last question. I feel like I can kind of just talk here with you guys forever. But being again that this is a coming of age film, I kind of want to place you guys both in the mindset of when you were the age of the characters that we were seeing in the movie. So, if you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would you tell them?
Oh,
Ooh.
that's such a hard question, but it's a very good question.
I'm glad.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I'll Olivia, I'll try. And
Yeah, go
then
for it. No one's asked this one yet. That's
no,
I
no one's
like
asked
this.
this one. Um, if I could give myself at that age some advice, don't here it is. Don't think of everything as wrong or right. Think of things as they are. Think of things as like an experience go through. Like I feel like so much when I was that age, I was like, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the wrong thing? Is this the good thing? Is this the bad thing? But as I gain years and experiences, I learn it's not all one thing ever. It's so much more complicated, and like try your best to hold space for that. Like try to see how something that hurts will help you grow, and that something that is so amazing is not going to be so amazing forever. I that is kind of a bummer, so I'll say one last thing, which is just like you will learn from stuff, and that is going to be cool to look back on.
Hmm. I love that. Yeah. I mean, we've gotten the cool opportunity to talk to a lot of young people, a lot of teens, through this film. And I think like whenever we do like a Q&A with teens or like we get DMs from teens, a lot of the times they're asking advice, like career advice as teenagers. Um, and I think my advice, because I'm also a Capricorn, would probably be to assume that life is long. Like assume that you do have time, assume that your career isn't over at 25, because I think a lot of times like there's this idea perpetuated that teenagehood is the end all be all, that that's the end game. You need to know what you want to do and then slide into the best college and then slide into the best career and then that's it. Like but I mean, if that were to happen, then we wouldn't have things to write about. Like we really wouldn't have movies to make. Yeah, assume that life is long and try to live it in an interesting way.
Nice. Well, those are two very beautiful responses. I'm definitely feeling super motivated and pumped, so it's decent advice. So before we close out, I just want to thank you both so much for one, creating such a beautiful masterpiece of a film. And again, like the fact that this movie exists as for me as a Black, queer, Jewish person, like thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you for joining us today, for answering all my questions, for joining the Miami Jewish Film Festival in general. And maybe next year we'll be able to have it everything in person.
Right
Absolutely.
on.